say it's out of character.
Hello, I'm Lorette Legan, President of the Jacksonville Onslow Chamber of Commerce, and on behalf of the Chamber's Governmental Affairs Committee, I want to thank you for joining us for today's forum, Onslow. The Governmental Affairs Committee works with government agencies on issues that affect our business community. We monitor legislative issues that impact local business, promote partnerships between business, government, military, and education sectors, and present forums to create awareness on topics that are important to our entire community. Thank you for joining us for today's Mayor's Candidate Forum. And thank you to the City of Jacksonville for the use of these facilities and the city's media services for hosting and broadcasting this event. Our corporate sponsor is Duke Energy, that has been partnered with the Chamber to support forums for many years. They believe a well-informed constituency will make informed decisions. I now invite Millie Chalk, Duke Energy District Manager for Government and Community Relations and a member of the Chamber's Board of Directors, to the podium.
Thank you, Lorette, and good evening. Duke Energy is proud to partner with the Jacksonville Onslow Chamber of Commerce in sponsoring this forum focused on candidates running for Jacksonville mayor. In this turbulent world we live in, we recognize that voting is a privilege and being an informed voter is our responsibility. I look forward to an informational session as our candidates outline their vision and priorities for the city of Jacksonville. Duke Energy has a proud tradition of leadership and engagement in our communities and is proud to sponsor Forum Onslow. Now on to our candidates.
Thank you, Millie. And now I'm going to turn it over to our moderator for the forum, a veteran journalist who served as editor of the Daily News for 34 years and also as publisher for more than 10 of those years. He is now the co-host for the live and local radio show on Talk 96.3, Mr. Elliott Potter.
Thanks, Lorette. And thank you to the candidates for showing up. It's always a good first step, you know. You know, I've been moderating this program since Bruce Tichy was mayor. Court Street had a worldwide notoriety about it. And we used to shop in this space for shirts. I know both of you guys probably did too when it used to be a Belk. But things have changed quite a bit. I've been working with both of you for almost the entire time, so it is good to be with you. Both of you have been involved in various roles with the city for many years, and it is a testament to your service, I think, that you're where you are today. I'm looking forward to a great program, and I thank you both again for participating. I want to spend a few minutes to go over the rules for the evening. I have discussed them with the candidates, but I want everybody to understand where we are. We're going to try to keep this to about a 1-hour program. And because we only have 2 candidates, we've been able to add some flexibility, some more time for answering questions. That's one thing we have often heard from folks is they would like to see the candidates to get more time to be able to provide more detail and put more meat on the bones as far as the questions go and the answers. We are only asking the prepared questions tonight, but we have received suggestions from both the public and members of the Chamber's Governmental Affairs Committee, and we have tried to work them into the forum. All of our questions are general in nature, and they're not directed at a specific candidate. We are going to continue with our format that allows limited opportunity for rebuttal. I told you we have expanded the time frames. Well, each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer each question. We've gone as quickly as 30 seconds in the past, and that's a little bit too quick. We're going to alternate the order of questioning, of course. When both candidates have responded, the candidates you will have 2 chances at that point to offer 1-minute rebuttals. So I think you've got your rebuttal cards in front of you. So just hold those up. If after the round of questioning is completed, you would like to add another minute to just expand on what you've already said or to respond to something maybe that you have heard. Remember, you are limited to 2 rebuttals during the program, so I urge you to use them wisely. At the end, we'll have summations, and this is another place where we've added some time. We're going to give you 5 minutes for the summations. You don't have to take that entire time. Earlier, I reminded you that Lincoln only took 2 minutes for the Gettysburg Address. So it's okay if you stop short of 5. Here are some of the basic rules of engagement. This is something that we've stuck with the chamber for a long time. This is a forum, it's not a debate. And we ask that you address the questions that are posed to you, and we ask that you address the audience and not each other. We also ask that you adhere to the time limits. When you see a yellow light, and Kelsey Sticklitz from the chamber is our timer tonight, and when you see the yellow light, that tells you that you have about 30 seconds to end your response. When you see the red light and hear the buzzer, that means your time is up. And what I would ask you to do at that point is just simply complete the sentence. You may not be able to complete your entire thought, but you are allowed to complete the sentence, and we'll go from there. Any questions from the candidates? All right. Let's go with our opening statement, and we'll let Mayor Sammy Phillips open up, and then Ken Hagan, if you would please, then at that point just follow up. Give us a brief summary of your personal background, your record of leadership in the community, and your reason for running for mayor.
Okay. First off, I would be remiss if I didn't thank the citizens of Jacksonville for allowing me to have served as their mayor for almost 12 years now. I am a native of Jacksonville. I was born and raised here. I grew up in the local school system, graduated from Jacksonville High School, attended Coastal Carolina Community College. I was a police officer here for over 30 years. I retired in 2004, at which time I did get elected to council in 2005 for a 2-year term as an at-large candidate. I served 2 years, and at the end of that term, Mayor Slagle, who was in office at the time, had asked me if I would run, since she had planned not to run in the 2007 election, and I told her that I would. I've had a great career in policing here. I really enjoyed serving the people of Jacksonville, as far as qualifications are concerned, having worked in city government, in the upper levels of management with the police department, I feel like it helped prepare me a little bit. I did go to and get a BS degree in criminal justice, and also obtained a master's degree in public administration from East Carolina University. But my thing is here, I just love this city. It's my city. I grew up here. I want to do what's best for this city, and that if I'm reelected as mayor of this city, I will continue to work hard to ensure that our citizens receive the best bang for their buck. As far as my thing is, I would like to be able to hold down expenses as we have done so well at doing, but yet producing and providing a very high quality of life for our citizens. And I'm out of time. Thank you.
Mr. Hagan?
Thank you very much. I appreciate everybody being here tonight. I think this is a representative of what our country's all about, and that is showing up to hear the candidates. I think I'd like to see this room overflowing, but I appreciate everybody being here tonight. As far as my background is concerned, I spent 37 and a half years working for the city of Jacksonville, 28 years as the director of Parks and Recreation, and then almost 7 years as the city manager. During that time, I developed most of the park systems that you have here in Jacksonville. I also developed the original trail system and greenways for Jacksonville, and I'm very proud of that, because when I first came to Jacksonville 50 years ago, recreation was in the bottom of the totem pole when it came to funding, when it came to citizens' input, and a lot of other areas. Now it's kind of moved its way up almost to the top of the totem pole. As a matter of fact, Mayor Phillips, when he announced that he was going to be running for mayor, used recreation as his first sentence, saying how much they had improved recreation, and they certainly have. So I felt very proud of that moment because recreation had gained its momentum. The other thing, when I became the city manager, I initiated some programs. One of the things that I initiated was some savings in the sanitation department that saved the city $250,000. I also saved the city $35,000 by having an in-house, that's the staff, doing a pay study that, again, we didn't have to use consultants. So I think my background is sufficient to run for mayor. And the reason I'm running for mayor is there are things that are going on, not going on, but things in the city that I want to see improved. And I will outline that later in the program. And I just feel like, it's time for a change, and I'll explain that later as well. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Hagan, you'll get the first shot at this question. Over the years, past mayors of Jacksonville have taken many different approaches to the job. Some have stuck to presiding over meetings and representing the city in largely ceremonial roles, while others have been heavily involved in operations and shaping the council's agenda. What do you see as the proper role of the mayor?
Well, I think the proper role for the mayor is to be a leader. He needs to have the personality, and he needs to have the workmanship to be able to mold the council in the direction that the city needs to go. During my career with the city, I served under 6 mayors. As a matter of fact, while I was the city manager, I served under 3 mayors. Some of them were what I would term as strong mayors. Some of them I would term as weak mayors. The strong mayors had the ability to lead the city in the direction that they felt it was necessary to go, and they were a leader as the mayor. And that would be what I would propose as a mayor. I want to be a strong mayor. I don't want to sit in that chair. I want to use that chair to move Jacksonville forward. And we have some issues in Jacksonville that need addressing, and I would take that position as mayor, and I would use that position to move my agenda, which will improve the city, forward. And I would do that through working with the council and trying to get the council on the same page. I believe a mayor should be a strong leader as opposed to one who takes direction from somewhere else. Thank you.
Okay, and we'll move to Mr. Phillips. And again, the question is, what do you see as the proper role of a mayor?
Well, I know how I have operated as mayor in the city of Jacksonville, and that is I've taken the leadership role. I think that there's no one can argue with me that there is stability in city government. My council, who I'm very honored to serve with, we do a very effective job at sitting together in these meetings, these workshops, and working together. A mayor alone is not going to get anything done. I can tell you that right now. A mayor's going to have to be able to build that consensus. And I think that I do a great job and have done a great job of that. North Carolina is what is considered, well, let me back up for a minute. Our charter, the city's charter, says that we are a manager-council form of government. It doesn't say a mayor-council form of government or manager-mayor form of government. So as mayor, I can lead, but I still have to work with my council to get things done. And I think that I've done a very effective job at that. I think that our city has improved. I think no one can argue with me. If you walk out this door right now and travel around this city, you're going to see major improvements that have been made over time, over the last 12 years. Ride down any throughway in Jacksonville, every entryway into Jacksonville. What we've done is we've actually beautified this city. We've taken a lot of our blight. We've torn down over 120 structures over the last few years that were blight, just sitting there empty and just making this city look terrible. And it looked terrible to people that come here. And that was one of my big concerns when I took office, was to get this cleaned up. But I have to work with my council, with my staff, to be able to get these things done. And I think I've done an excellent job. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you. And Mr. Phillips, you will have first crack at this question. What would you identify as your top priorities for moving the city forward?
Well, top priorities, we got several things that we're looking at on the horizon that we're going to have to tackle. First off, it would be remiss if I didn't mention the sales tax distribution. trying to regain revenue from that, to change that formula. Other things, I want to be able to continue my One City campaign, which I think has been very effective at bringing my community together. You know, the One City campaign stresses civility and just, you know, courtesy to each other, and I think it's gone a long ways as far as building those relationships within the community. I've been able to, well, one of the things I'd want to do is make sure that we continue to be one of the safest cities in the United States. Jacksonville has been considered one of the safest places to live, and that's because of our public safety. We do our public safety department does a great job. Our council is very aware of that, and working with the council, I've been able to continue providing necessary backing for the for continued public safety. Also, we have streets that are terrible, and this is something that we've tried to approach from different angles, trying to figure out the best ways in which we could actually address these. Now, I'd like to come back to this question later because I'm going to run out of time before I finish, but I do want to point out one thing. Some of the streets that I get a lot of complaints about are not city-maintained streets, you know, and these belong to the North Carolina Department of Transportation. We have no authority on them. That's Marine Boulevard, Henderson Drive, Western Boulevard, Belfort Road, Country Club Road, Hargett Street. I don't know if I mentioned Gum Branch or not, Onslow Drive. All these are streets that are not maintained by the city. Our biggest problem right now is Henderson Drive, and
Okay.
I want to come back to that later.
All right.
So,
Mr. Hagan, what would you identify as your top priorities for moving the city forward?
I have three. The first one is the streets, and I have a plan to fix the streets, and I'll go into that at the end of the 5 minutes. The streets can be fixed, and we can find the money to do that. As the city manager, I proposed at that time a 4-cent dedicated fee, or not a fee, but a dedicated sum of money that would be used every year to fund our CIP program, capital improvement program for the city. It had never been done before. We always used our capital improvements, whatever was left over in the budget, they used for that. So I came up with devised a plan for 4 cents to be dedicated just for that CIP program. That was 13 years ago. The city still uses that as they fund their CIP programs. The second item that I would address is New River area. The New River area used to be the jewel of Jacksonville. Now, it's just the reverse. I challenge everybody sitting here and everybody watching on television to ride through the New River area and see how badly it's deteriorated. I think it's time for the city to take ownership of that. It's time for them to come up, sit at the table with whoever owns those buildings and start looking at revitalizing the New River area. That is an area that needs some attention. My third is recreation, which is near and dear to my heart. It's time, once again, as it was 20 years ago when we built the Jacksonville Commons, for a new indoor facility. We are turning people away from our programs. We are turning people away from wanting to use facilities. That should not happen with a city government who is supposed to be funding all of their departments at a level that accommodates all of their citizens. We can do that also through partnerships with the tourism tax, partnerships with the schools, and partnerships with the city. Thank you.
Does anybody want to use their rebuttal card at this point?
okay.
You're going to use it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Good deal.
Okay. I just want to mention that, talk here a little bit about the 4-cent dedicated fee. Of course, it has been used to finance some capital projects and everything, but I believe as far as using it, it's still a tax. You know, if you add to that to fix roads, you're still adding a property tax there. I have a little bit better plan, and we've been trying to initiate this plan. We've taken to the legislature a request to be able to implement a 1/4-cent sales tax. And the reason why I look at the 1/4-cent sales tax as being the most appropriate way to do it is because if I stand in my front yard and watch cars go down my street, I'll guarantee you half those cars are not city residents. So, You know, I think I think instead of keep going to our property tax owners, the people that own property, houses, homeowners and all that, I don't think that's the best way to do that. So I did want to put that in there. And the other thing is with the recreation, we're doing everything we can as far as recreation is concerned. We're looking at trying to do the rebuild on Jack Amyette. We just got the
Okay.
insurance settlement on that. And,
We're at the end of that time limit we got 1 minute for rebuttals, just as a reminder.
okay.
But you do have first crack at this question. And what is your position on, excuse me, Mr. Hagan has first crack at this question. I apologize.
That's all right.
What is your position on raising taxes? I know you'll be glad that I got you first. Even if you are opposed to more taxes, how do you address increasing demands for funding to ensure the city keeps up with such needs as street improvements, upkeep of city facilities and parks, and quality of life issues?
Well, it may not take 2 minutes to answer this one because I would not have a tax increase unless it was made very clear to me that that was the only way to provide the services for the community. I don't believe that is the case right now. Now, the city is restricted a little bit from previous years in that the legislature has, now when you annex, you have to have the people come to you to annex. You can't just go out and annex. So that kind of stymies the city a little bit in improving their tax base. But I believe we can fix the problems that Jacksonville has without a tax increase, and I don't foresee that happening anytime soon. But let me say this about the streets, okay? If it came down to a situation where we had no other alternative to fix our streets other than to impose some sort of tax, I would look at that. I don't say I would approve that, but I think the streets are the most important thing to be fixed right now, and I've talked to hundreds, literally hundreds of residents, and not a single one of them disagrees with the top priority, and that being the streets. I'm not saying they would approve a tax increase, but I think if that was the only way of improving our streets and it was put to a vote by the residents, that would be the approach that I would use.
Okay?
We've considered all those alternatives also, but the council as a body has decided that the quarter-cent sales tax would be the best way to do this. Again, like I said, because people that use the streets, you know, are not just property owners. I mean, they're property taxpayers. They're people, you know, from outside the city that come in and use roads. So I think that would actually be the best way to finance the redoing of the streets. We got like 155 miles of streets that we have to resurface. It would take a long time. This quarter-cent sales tax that we asked for, that I sent a resolution to the General Assembly representatives here, was that we would only have it in place for 5 years. It was a quarter-cent sales tax, but it would also have to be voted on by the citizens if they wanted that money, and it would produce a large amount of money. A quarter cent will provide about $2.4 million a year. So with that money, we can more than pave the streets of Jacksonville without causing people's property tax to go up again and again and again. And that's where my stance is.
Okay. I'll move forward. And I believe, Mr. Phillips, you would get this one. What kind of support do you feel the city should provide efforts to build a multi-purpose or sports facility in the area? Doesn't necessarily have to be in the city, but that could be part of your answer.
Well, I think Mr. Hagan said it correctly here that, you know, this is something that's going to have to be a combination of different people working together. The TDA, or Tourism Development Authority of both the city and the county, the city government and the county government. I would advocate that we have a task force where we do a study, you know, determine, you know, feasibility, and make sure that we're going down the right road, make sure that there's a, you know, a need established. And we need to figure out how we're going to pay for it. And again, this is something I don't want to put on the backs of the taxpayers in Jacksonville. I think this is something that should be done through tourism money or some other type of financing other than a long-term debt for the citizens of Jacksonville or Onslow County.
Okay, Mr. Hagan?
Well, that's, excuse me, the facility is one of the three items that I plan on stating tonight. The facility, there does need to be a task force. The mayor is correct on that, and we need to sit down. But we need to bring all the players that might be interested in this building to the table. And the players could be the schools, the players could be the community college, it could be the city, and it can be the tourism. Tourism, which I serve on that board, I'm the vice chair of the tourism, so I'm pretty familiar with what kind of funding they have. We're going to have approximately $5 million to apply to this type of facility. Now, this money not only can be used in conjunction with other entities that would buy into this, but it will also generate revenue. And the reason I say that is tourism, obviously, what we try to do is bring tourists to Jacksonville. Through this facility, we could have sporting events that, in fact, would fill up some of our motels, and it would actually generate more revenue through tourism tax. So by bringing all of the players to the table, now I'm not saying all of them would buy in. The county needs to be there as well. Some of them will say, we're not interested, and that's fine. But we need to find out who the players are going to be. Then we need to figure out what it needs to be, and then we need to figure out the price tag for it, and then we can try and figure out how that's all going to come together. So the task force would be a wonderful idea, and I agree with that.
Okay. And Ms. Phillips, you will get, no, I get that wrong again. Mr. Hagan.
Why are you leaving me out?
I don't know. I don't know. I'm used to going back and forth, but you know what happens when you get old. How should the city prepare for any needs that could arise with the coming influx of billions of dollars with lots of new workers in military construction money at local bases?
Well, that's a good question. Repeat it, please?
Well, I'm just asking for, basically what should be the city's approach? How would we prepare for any needs that might come up when you're spending that much money and drawing that many people, that many workers into the area? It may be a restricted period of time, but yet lots of folks.
Yeah, I understand it a little better now. I would say that, again, we may have to develop a task force that would involve the county, because we can't assume that all of these people are going to be city residents. I'm sure with that many people coming for the construction jobs, some of them are going to live in the county areas. But I think we do need to approach it as a multi area for the city and the county to decide how can we best approach taking care of these folks, because they're going to use our infrastructure, they're going to use our schools, and it's going to impact the school funding. So I think, sitting down and seeing the numbers that are going to be coming in of folks, and then have the task force go through that and see what the impacts are going to be with the streets, with the schools, and with the infrastructure that we already have in place. So I don't think that's something that can be taken lightly, and I don't think that one entity, that being the city, is going to be the one that's going to solve it. It's going to have to be several. You're going to have to talk to the hospital to see how it's going to impact our health services. So, this in my opinion, this is going to require some people sitting down around a table, all the stakeholders, and sitting down and saying, okay, how's this going to impact my area, and how can we resolve that?
Mr. Phillips?
We met a couple of months ago with General Alford and his staff out on base. It was a lot of the different community partners were involved. And this was discussed, and it does raise some concerns. We have a school system now that's just bulging at the seams. I think the county's on tap to try to build 2 schools. I think they got funding to build 1. But there's a great possibility that our services are going to be impacted greatly by this influx. But again, this is something that has to be planned for, and the planning is in process. Or in progress. It's something that we don't take lightly. We know that, as Mr. Hagan says, it's going to affect everything from public safety to public health, to housing. It's going to affect our roadways. Again, how much traffic is on our roadways. So there is a great need for us to sit down and try to figure out what we're going to do. And like I said, it is being done. That process is going on now. Now, we've been told by the military that this impact may not be as great as once thought it was. Now, when they first released this information, it sounded like it was going to be pure pandemonium, whenever all these people descended on town. But now, understanding that some of these are going to be broken up into different contracts over time, that kind of takes away a little bit of the impact. But I still think it's something that we're going to continue to plan for, and we're going to make sure that we're in a position to be able to handle this influx of people.
Okay. And this question will be, you will start with this question. We certainly have had our share of experiences with storms over the last few years. What is your assessment of the city's response? And where, if any place, do you see room for improvement?
Well, I think that, during the last two storms, well, in Florence especially, because we were heavily impacted by that, I think that we did a great job of keeping our citizens informed. We worked closely with the county, trying to make sure that we were able to provide the services that were necessary. There was a lot of people that were really severely impacted by this storm. There's people that are still not back in their homes, believe it or not. And we're talking about over a year later. So, we did a lot of preparation. Okay, we were prepared. Of course, we weren't prepared for what we got, but we were as prepared as we could be at the time. We did learn a lot from this. We did learn that, sometimes when you think you're prepared, you ain't prepared. We did learn hard fast from that, so we don't take these storms lightly. As you saw with Dorian, it was battle stations, across the way, city and county. So I think we did a great job, again, like I said, of providing our services to our citizens during this storm, keeping them informed, keeping our city and county operations, emergency operations going through the thick of the storm. And, as far as what I've heard back from a lot of citizens is they were very thankful for the way the city and the county handled emergency operations during this period. And the one thing I can only say is, knock on wood, I hope we never have to witness anything like we saw last year again. It was awful. Again, it impacted so many people, and your heart's got to go out to them. I mean, there's still people, like I said, not back in their homes. We actually had a councilman who was out of his home for almost 8 months. So it impacted everybody.
Thank you.
Well, the one thing I'd say about that is I'm glad I wasn't the mayor when it hit. And, this is going to be a quick answer for me because I thought the city did a great job. I was here when Bertha and Fran hit. We weren't as prepared as they are now. And we suffered for that. We now have a city staff that knows how to deal with FEMA. We have a finance department that knows how to work their way through the federal bureaucracy when you're trying to get funds back. The city was very responsive. As a matter of fact, this time, they actually hired contractors before the storm hit, and once the storm, the storm was gone for like one day, and here they came down the streets with these big trucks. So my hat's off to the city. They did a fantastic job of cleaning up quickly and getting at least the parts of the city that needed to be cleaned up. Now, as far as individuals, that's hard for the city to deal with individuals who are suffering from their homes. But I know this to be a fact. The city does everything that they can through FEMA to also deal with individuals who have damage to their property. So actually, my hat's off to the city how they responded.
Okay. You'll get first crack at this one, Mr. Hagan. We have seen some good things happening downtown, both from the public and the private sectors. Yet Jacksonville's downtown still hasn't become the kind of success story that you see in other places, particularly those cities, some of them right here in eastern North Carolina, that have a waterfront like we do. What needs to happen so that the downtown becomes the kind of asset that Jacksonville and maybe all of Onslow County needs it to become?
Well, we've been wrestling with downtown for some 30 years. And we've had, we've had entities, we had Bold, we had Downtown Betterment, been a lot of different entities that have wrestled with this problem. But if you took a map of downtown or whatever, first of all, you'd have to define what downtown is, but I'm assuming it's, in people's minds. There's really not much private property in the downtown area to be developed or redesigned. A lot of it has to do with the jails down there, the courthouses down there, county offices are still down there in some cases. So there's not a whole lot of land that you can turn over to a developer or a private sector and say, fix this up. Now, I know the city is looking to add a couple of parking areas in the downtown area to accommodate the festivals that they have down there and accommodate just people visiting down there. And quite honestly, the city's done a pretty good job of doing what they can with what they have and working with the county in trying to improve it. For instance, they bought the marina and they have redone the marina, and I think the marina will really add to the downtown area. I just don't know that there's a whole lot that you can do that hasn't already been done downtown, because there's not a whole lot to work with, in my opinion.
Okay, Mr. Phillips?
Thank you. It's a tough chore down there with downtown, and as Ken mentioned, parking is a big issue down there. We barely have enough parking down there to accommodate the courts when they're in session. The other thing, we just had a joint session with our county commissioners, and at that session, we decided that we were going to reinitiate our downtown task force, consisting of some county commissioners and city council members, to look at and begin a study again of the downtown area and see where the opportunities lie. Now, we have had some private investment down there that has actually kind of kicked things off a little bit. And, when you were manager, we had several attempts to try to pump it up. And it's a long process. It was a long process to clean up downtown. Being part of the police department, one of Roger Halbert's, who was the chief at the time, one of his big jobs for me was to make sure it got cleaned out. And we used, the military services disciplinary control board to take care of a lot of the stuff that was going on down there, and the rest of it just eventually moved out. But there are opportunities downtown. Martin Aragona, for instance, is one of the people I like to point out as being he's in there. He's in up to his neck downtown. He's opened up the restaurant. He's opened up some other businesses down there, and we're starting to see that grow a little bit in that area. But again, parking, how we're going to work that into that area, that's going to be something that our folks are going to have to study hard, because without the parking, who's going to want to invest in that area down there? If you can't have a place for your customers to park their cars to get to your business, that does present a big problem.
Okay. And you will get first crack at this question, Mr. Phillip. What are your points of emphasis when it comes to maintaining a strong relationship with the military?
Well, I don't think anybody can be critical of me with that, because I have spent quite a bit of time, building relationships with the commands from the different units on base. We have what we call our joint planning group, or our cooperative planning group. It's the CPG. We meet on quarterly, and we have actually been able to get a lot of things done working together, things that were just not even thought of years ago. Between the base, it always seemed like there was a fence there, and they had their stuff out there on the base and we had our stuff. But now we're starting to work to do things to help each other. We have a lot of service agreements that are in place now where we, provide certain public safety things such as fire to some of their areas where they do it in some of our areas. We actually control all the traffic signals on base now. But through this cooperative planning group, we're able, we've benefited, and I'm talking about some of the air station commander, the main side commander, and our commissioners and on WASA. This is part of this planning group, but again, like I said, it's really has, even communications, that's another thing that was real important, was the public safety communications. We're able to have interoperability with each other now. Used to, we didn't, years ago. Remember policing, once they get on the base, that was the end of it. But now we work with the base real closely. We have that radio communication with them. But I do have built some good relationships out there with our military commanders, and Jacksonville is a different town as far as how we look at our military neighbors now. I think that things have changed over the last several decades, and they're as big a part of this community as anybody,
Okay.
and we appreciate their presence.
Mr. Hagan?
Well, I think communication is the key for this particular question. You've got to maintain the communication with the base officials, and they have to be kept abreast of what's going on in the city. Now, this is a two-way street. They need to communicate with the city as well. So, and I think Sammy is correct. I think certainly what existed even 20 years ago, well, let's go back 30 years. What existed 30 years ago no longer exists. We do have good relationships with the base, but in order to continue to go forward as the world changes and their situation changes, remember, 25 years ago, you could go on and off that base pretty easy. We could go right now and get in our car and get on that base. You can't do that anymore. So the world changes, and as it changes, we're going to have to accommodate ourselves with the military situation. We don't like it as civilians, the restrictions that they put on, but I don't think they like it either. So the relationship between the city and the base always has to be paramount because they're our biggest employer, and they're here and they're not going anywhere. So the key to that is to continue to have good communications with them. And I think the way you do that is the mayor's office and the manager's office continues to communicate with the commanding general's office so that if there are any situations where we need to have a meeting, that meeting can be set up very quickly and it can be solved very quickly.
I believe we got time for a couple more questions. Don't feel badly if you have to stop short of 2 minutes with these, since we'll have plenty of time, maybe try to get this in under an hour. I'd like to know, and we'll start with Mr. Hagan on this one, can you give me a quick assessment of Jacksonville's economy, and what are your ideas for economic growth, specifically bringing more jobs to the Jacksonville area?
Well, again, I've been here 50 years, and we've talked about this for 50 years. It's a very tough environment that we're in here in Jacksonville and Eastern North Carolina. My position is that we continue to work with the chamber and work with the economic development to see what kind of industry we can get in here. But I think we need to be realistic about it. We need to take a look at Jacksonville and Onslow County and understand what our limitations are. One of our limitations are our roads, our highways, not the city, not city streets. Getting to and from Onslow County for major industries is a very difficult thing. We no longer have a rail system that brings anything in, so that's eliminated. We don't have a major airport. We have a nice airport, but it's not a major. So major industry is not going to be looking at Onslow County and Jacksonville and saying this is where we need to locate. We need to continue to keep our nose to the grindstone and find out what is out there and what we're able to accommodate. But we also need to recognize that our economy pretty much is an economy built around restaurants, not convenience stores, but big box stores. That's what our economy is. And it provides a large number of jobs, but not high-paying jobs. And so the opportunity for high-paying jobs needs to continue to be explored. But I think more than anything else, we need to look in that mirror and understand who we are and what our limitations are when we go out to see if we can recruit industry. Now, one of the things I will say, I think we have a a ready-made workforce, which has always mystified me why industry doesn't come here, in the military, and the people getting out of the military. It looks to me like that would appeal to some industries that would want to come here because we've got people getting out every day.
Okay.
So I think that part needs to be looked at a little closer and see how we can
All
maneuver
right.
through that.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Phillips?
You're right. That sounds just like my answer. Very good answer.
Well, just say ditto and move on.
Now, I'm going to expand on it just a little bit, though. Ken's exactly right. We do got to realize, I think for many, many years, people were expecting us to bring like a BMW plant in here or something that was going to produce those type of jobs. Well, it's just not realistic for us here. But we do have a lot of opportunities here. And I think that working closely with our Economic Development Commission and our chamber, that we need to look at expanding our economy through what we are, like Ken says. We got tourism. Tourism's big here in Jacksonville. Our service industry, again, we've done a great job of bringing hey, look, I remember working midnight shift back in the mid-70s, and you'd have to, to find a place to eat breakfast in the early wee hours of the morning. There won't but one place. You could go to Tino's down there on Court Street. But now you have all these different places down in Jacksonville. If you want to go out on a Friday night, good luck, by the way, finding something. But we have choices here now. And a lot of, we've grown here. I do want to say one thing about the highway system, and that's the big thing here. Our access to interstate highway is what really hurts us worse than anything as far as being able to attract any kind of industry here. But there are long-range plans, with DOT. And one thing I'm going to give DOT credit for, if they've spent over several million, over $50 million in our area over the last few years, building up our highway infrastructure around the cities, the bypass and some of the other areas that they've expanded here. But still, that access to the interstate is big as far as industrial development is concerned. And we've seen these areas that have been around the interstates, and we witnessed how they popped up with industry. And unfortunately, that's not our case. So, again, working together, hopefully we can bring jobs in here, by putting our heads together and trying our best.
I'm going to ask one more question because we haven't touched on this topic, but it's got to be about a minute, and it's a yes or no question, but you can expand from there.
Okay.
Because we haven't touched on it, and I noticed that. Do you feel like, and both of you can answer this, do you feel like Jacksonville's a safe city? I believe you're first. Yeah.
Do I think Jacksonville's a safe city? Well, I tell you what, I watch the news, the local news a lot of times, and I see Greenville, Kinston, New Bern, Rocky Mount, and I say to myself, thank God I don't live there. But, the thing about it is I have a lot of faith in our Director of Public Safety, Mike Yanero. He's done a great job. He's been there for almost 15 years now. I think he does a great job with our department, our police department. I think they are so proactive. They're so community policing oriented. I think that has had such a huge impact on our safety picture here in Jacksonville. We've moved away from that old traditional policing, like when I was coming up through the ranks, and we're moving more towards I want to say, we're thoughtful policing. We finally started using our brains instead of our brawn a lot of times in cases. And I think that what this has done, it's actually helped build this community, build relationships in this community. And I've run out of time again.
Yeah, we've run out of time because I'm going to try to do this one in about a minute.
Well, the answer to that is yes. I think it is a very safe community. However, I would say this. What city in America is safe nowadays? I mean, you see the news and you pick up the newspaper and it's anywhere and everywhere. But as far as Jacksonville is concerned, I echo what he says. We have a great director overseeing everything, which, by the way, can I put that in there? I hired. This is a forum. What can I say? No, this is a safe city. We have a great police department. We have a great fire department. They do wonderful work. I can't say enough about the city staff in all directions, but especially the police department and fire department, which, by the way, both are nationally accredited. And it's not too many cities in North Carolina that can say that. So, yeah, my answer to that is yes, this is a safe city.
Okay, well, thank you
I want
both.
to add a little rebuttal there.
Sure.
Because I want to add
If
something
you
on
keep
to
it
what he
short.
said. I'm not
I
rebutting anything he
promise me to
said.
keep it short.
I do want to give some credit to our fire department too, because all our ISO ratings have really gone down. And, you know, this has impacted a lot of people on their homeowners insurance and their business, commercial insurance. So I need to give them some kudos too, because they're a big part of the whole public safety picture. So I've wasted all my rebuttals.
Did you want to add
now.
anything?
Yeah, I think I've included the fire department in it.
He did,
Okay,
he did,
okay,
he did.
Okay. So now we are up to the summation, and I believe, Mr. Hagan, you go first.
Thank you. Well, my summation is this. This is an important 5 minutes for my campaign. There's no question about it. And I've thought long and hard about it for a long time. I have issues with the pace of how the city goes about solving problems. And I'll give you two examples. The mayor's already alluded to the fact that they had a workshop. And by the way, the workshop was back, if I may be off on the date, in June of 2018, which is approximately 15 months ago, at which time they directed the mayor to contact a local delegation to see if they could do something about our streets, the funding portion that he talked about. That was 14 months ago. Since that time, and of course, the state rejected our proposal at that time. Since that time, there's no plan. We still don't have a plan to fix our city streets. I have a plan, and the plan is very simple. We can pave every street in Jacksonville in a 15-year cycle. And by the way, city streets normally, under normal circumstances, will hold up for 20 years. So you really don't have to repave every street except every 20 years. But when you repave them, you also have to do some other work from time to time, depending on the street. My plan, and I go back to it, is that we need to look at dedicating a portion of our sales tax to just repairs of streets every year. If we did 4 cents and included the money we get for Powell bill, which is approximately $900,000 a year. You do the math, and I'm telling you, the math says that we can repave every street in Jacksonville in a 15-year cycle. That's number one. Number two, and I'm going to bring up Jack Amiette because that's where I started working 50 years ago. To me, this is a personal opinion, but it's important to me. Jack Amiette should never be closed for 14 months. It was damaged in Hurricane Florence 14 months ago. That sits in the heart of an area that needs a recreation center because of who lives there. I worked out of that building for 26 years. I know what it needs. We could have had that building open, and I understand that the city was negotiating with their insurance carrier because they didn't think they were getting a fair deal, and I agree with that. But there should have been an alternative once they realized that this was going to take a long period of time to do. We should have had an interim plan that opened up, maybe not, you couldn't have got in that center. I've been in the center and it was in bad shape. So, but you could have put temporary buildings on that site and you could have been up and running within 2 months with a program that took care of that neighborhood. So that's what I object to. And I believe the mayor should lead that. I will tell you this, and I believe this. If I were the recreation director, if I was the city manager, if I was the mayor, that would have never happened. I wouldn't have allowed it. I may have lost my job, but I wouldn't have allowed it. I'd be screaming. You know, the first time I was hired as the recreation director, the city manager at the time told me something that I always used. He said, "Ken, you're my recreation director. And when you see a need for recreation and parks in this community, I want you to come into my office and I want you to stand on my desk if you have to get my attention so that we can address that. And that's what I would have done. So yeah, I blame the city administration. I blame the mayor for not leading the charge to have that building open because it was needed. And I get back to number 3. We can build a new facility that will generate some revenue without a tax increase. It's that simple. For the 50 years I've been here, people have been telling me what you can't do. You can't build another rec center. We did. Sturgeon City is, what are you doing with Sturgeon City? We have a 4,000 square foot building down there right now. We did it. You can't get a tourism tax here. We got a tourism tax. I personally went in my vehicle on my time to the legislature to walk the halls to lobby for a tourism tax. We eventually got it through the work of our local delegation. So don't tell me you can't do things in Jacksonville, because I can sit here and tell you we can and we will. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Phillips?
Not going to get extra time.
Well, you know, actually, we hit the clock about 30 seconds early.
Okay. Well, listen,
And, but you know what? I'll give you the 10 or 15 seconds.
I probably won't need it. Look, here's the thing. I'm going to close it by saying our city is in a lot better shape than it was 12 years ago. You know, and I think it's through my leadership, my ability to be able to bring my council together and make decisions that are positive for this city. Now, some of the things that Mr. Hagan has brought up here, there's some things that I wish we could do a little bit better. I know New River is a problem. New River, we are in a contract with the UNC School of Government right now, and they're looking at opportunities for private investment. That's what's going to have to take New River and run with it, is private investment, not government involvement. We have the infrastructure there. We've done beautification in New River, you know, to the infrastructure. The quarter-cent sales tax is still, in my opinion, I haven't given up on that yet. The legislature turned us down on it. Sure they did, because Onslow County was asking for a 1 cent sales tax for schools. They had a problem. They have schools that are overcrowded. But so because of the 2 requests, they turned both of them down. That doesn't mean I'm going to give up, because again, like I said, I don't want a property tax to pay for roads. I would rather go the other way and get everybody to help pay for those roads a little bit. I think the property taxpayers here in Jacksonville get beat up every time that something's needed. And I think we need to try to find other ways to finance government than to keep going to the same people every time. As far as Jackie Ahmed is concerned, we've done over $2 million in improvements over the last few years to that facility. The ball field, the splash pad, the outdoor basketball courts, the parking, all these things have been improved. Yes, the Amiette Center got wrecked by Hurricane Florence, okay? It did a tremendous amount of job. We had actually just redone the floor in the gym for a lot of money. The insurance company wanted to pay us half of what the value was on it. Of course, we weren't going to settle for that. You know, as far as the programs are concerned at Jackie Ahmed, they haven't stopped. We've been transporting for our programs to other places. We've been actually taking the kids to other facilities to still be involved. So it's not like they're completely out of the recreation business in New River. We will address it. You know, again, the slowness is we haven't decided what we want to put back there yet. You know, this is a council decision. Am I driving it? Yes, I am. I'm trying my best to get this done as fast as I can, because I don't want that area of our city to be devoid of the opportunities that exist in other areas of the city. I think that on the tourism tax, the way I remember it is I remember appearing before Representative Grady's, or not Representative Grady's hearing, but at the legislature and testifying how badly we needed that tourism tax, and that's how we ended up getting it. And I know that I've sent letters to legislators before on behalf of the city trying to get that two-thirds, switch from the one-third for capital projects to two-thirds advertising to two-thirds back to, or up to two-thirds of capital, going towards capital projects and only one-third for advertising. So that gives us some opportunity to be able to use that money for building, things such as the, you need to take that?
No, sir. It was telling me that we're at the end of our hour, but you keep going. You got it.
Oh, Lord, it is. But, yeah, be that as it may, there is opportunities out there to have that dialogue and that task force that we were talking about for a center that may be able to be at some point in time built. Again, like I said, with a task force, determine the need and financing. I think that, that's going to have to happen first before we decide that that's where we're going to go. Again, that's something I would never want to spend the taxpayers' money on. As long as it's just occupancy tax money that we get, that's one thing. So I'm going to quit now, even though I do have more time left, because I think she's walked up to the podium.
I want to be fair about it.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
All right, well, thank you so much, Mayor Phillips. Thank you, Mr. Hagan, for joining us at this forum. Thanks again to our corporate sponsor, Duke Energy, and the city of Jacksonville for the use of these facilities and their media services. Those watching on TV, if you missed any part of the Forum Onslow, check the listings for G10 for the rebroadcast time and dates. And everyone remember, your vote does count. Absentee ballot request forms are now available online at the Onslow County Board of Elections website. And they also have the listing for the dates, times, and locations for early one-stop voting. Election Day is November the 5th, 6:30 a.m. to 7:30 p.m. at your local precinct. On behalf of the Jacksonville Onslow Chamber of Commerce, thank you for joining our Meet the Candidates Forum. This concludes our program.